All right, let's see it. So there are at least three catastrophic flaws with the argument that Exodus 21:16 precludes the conclusion that the Bible condones slavery. And the first is that every other part of the Bible that refers to slavery, including other parts within Exodus 21 itself, presupposes the normativity of slavery or outright condones or even endorses it, as we find, for instance, in Leviticus 25, verses 44 through 46. Now, there are two different broad types of slavery that are addressed in these laws, and addressed differently, by the way. When you go from the Covenant Code to other parts of Exodus to Deuteronomy to Leviticus, the laws are not consistent and sometimes directly contradict each other. But those two types of slavery are debt slavery, which is primarily reserved for native Israelites, and chattel slavery, which is explicitly reserved for non-Israelites in Leviticus 25, verses 44 through 46. So we have to distinguish the type of slavery we're talking about, and there are obviously more regulations on debt slavery because it involves native Israelites, and native citizens had more rights and more access to power and resources than did foreigners. So just appealing to Exodus 21:16 as an indication that the Bible doesn't condone slavery doesn't engage the argument at all, much less demonstrate that Exodus 21:16 in and of itself precludes the conclusion that the Bible condones slavery. There is no part of the Bible anywhere that in any way, shape, or form whatsoever questions, much less undermines or condemns, the practice itself of buying, selling, and owning other human beings. And this brings up the second concern. In order for this prohibition on kidnapping to preclude the conclusion that the Bible condones slavery, kidnapping must be either the only or at the very least the main means of sourcing enslaved people. But when we look throughout the rest of the Bible, kidnapping is not really an acceptable means of sourcing enslaved people. For native Israelites, debt slavery is the main means of enslavement, and that is because they have fallen into debt. And some of the propaganda of the Bible describes that as something that is done voluntarily, and then other parts not so much. For instance, in 1 Kings 4, where the woman's husband has died and the creditors are coming to take her children. That's an involuntary type of debt slavery. And when we look at chattel slavery, the primary means of sourcing enslaved folks is either purchase from foreign people, either in other nations or living in Israel, or conquest, taking them in battle, which is different from kidnapping and is endorsed in numerous places throughout the Hebrew Bible. So again, Exodus 21:16 doesn't get the job done. But that brings up the third catastrophic flaw, and that is that people are misinterpreting Exodus 21:16 because it is not a blanket prohibition on any and all kidnapping. Specifically, it prohibits the kidnapping of an ish, which means man in Hebrew. And in the Covenant Code, ish is a term of art. It is not a broad reference to any and all human persons. It's a reference to adult male Israelites. Now, this law is being adapted and adopted from Hammurabi's laws, where the prohibition is on kidnapping the child of an adult male citizen. And here the focus has been trained on the adult male citizen. When the Covenant Code wants to prohibit something being done to children, it specifies children. When it wants to prohibit something being done to enslaved folks or foreigners, it will specify. When it wants to be inclusive, it will list all of the folks involved, as you can see, for instance, in the law of the goring ox, which is in the very same chapter, where it talks about adult male or female citizens. It talks about the male or female children of adult citizens, and then it talks about enslaved folks. So in the Covenant Code, they're very specific to outline the social status of the perpetrators or the victims, because the punishments or the recompenses are different depending on the social status of the victim. And so what is being prohibited in Exodus 21:16 is the kidnapping of an adult male citizen. And this is even more explicit in Deuteronomy's adaptation of Exodus 21:16, which we find in Deuteronomy 24:7, where it is explicitly prohibiting the kidnapping of one of your brethren, one of the sons of Israel. an adult male citizen. And another reason we know this is in no way, shape, or form whatsoever questioning, much less condemning or undermining the practice of buying, selling, and owning other humans is that all of the societies around ancient Israel, including the Babylonian society from which Exodus 21:16 is adapted, had very robust slave trades and also prohibited the kidnapping of adult male citizens as well as the children of adult male citizens. So this is nothing different from what was going on everywhere else in ancient West Asia, and there is absolutely no sense whatsoever in which Exodus 21:16 questions, undermines, or condemns the practice of buying, selling, and owning other human beings. And so the argument that this undermines the notion that the Bible condones slavery is ignorant and misguided. There is no syllable of the Bible that in any way, shape, or form whatsoever questions, condemns, or prohibits the practice of buying, selling, and owning other human beings. And the sooner folks can get over that hump and face reality, the sooner they can actually start reading the Bible and applying it productively. Because right now, all you're doing is engaging in petty and naive apologetics to defend your own identity politics. You're not even directly engaging the Bible for what it is or on its own terms. And you need to be able to do that if you want to be able to use it in any way that is productive to yourself, much less to the rest of the world around you. And the fit for this video has been Gravity Falls.